The police officer's flashlight moved slowly across our front porch while my mother stood frozen in the driveway. She was still holding her expensive luggage. Her face turned pale. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Behind her, the taxi driver asked in an uncomfortable voice if she still needed help with her bags. She didn't answer. She couldn't. What she was seeing, what she was finally being forced to face, was something she never expected. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to the beginning. Back to the morning that changed everything. The morning my own mother gave me $30 and a bottle of water, then disappeared for the entire summer. My name is Kristen Harrison. I was 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and I thought I understood what hard times looked like. I was wrong. I had no idea what was about to happen. My mother, Valerie, had always been the type of woman who needed a man the way most people need air. My father left when I was 7 years old. My little brother, Nolan, was still a baby. I barely remember my father at all. What I do remember is the long line of boyfriends that came after him. There was the car salesman who stayed for 8 months. Then an accountant who lasted a year. After that came a fitness instructor who moved in for 3 weeks, ate all our food and disappeared, taking our microwave with him. Yes, our microwave. I still don't understand that. Through all of this I raised myself. And when Nolan came along, I raised him too. Mom was always too busy chasing her next love story to notice that her kids needed things like dinner, clean clothes, or a parent who showed up to teacher conferences. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for Boyd Carpenter. Mom met Boyd online in April. He was wealthy, charming, and lived in Vancouver. Within just a few weeks, my mom was flying out to see him almost every other weekend. Each trip lasted longer than the last, and every time she left, she gave me a little money and told me to manage things. By June, I knew this one was different. She talked about Boyd like he was a prince from a fairy tale. She was completely obsessed with him. Then came July 3rd. That morning began with a sound I will never forget, the sound of suitcases rolling across the hallway floor. Not the small overnight bags she usually took. These were the big suitcases. The kind you pack when you don't plan on coming back anytime soon. I found her in the kitchen, dressed like she was going to a luxury resort. Full makeup at 7 in the morning. Nolan was sitting at the table eating cereal, still half asleep. He was 11 years old and had no idea his summer was about to turn into a nightmare. Mom didn't even look at me when she explained. Boyd had invited her to spend the summer at his cabin in British Columbia. 2 weeks, maybe 3. She would be back before I knew it. Everything would be fine. I was an adult now, right? I had just graduated. I could handle things. Then she placed $30 on the counter. $30 and 1 bottle of water. I still don't know why she gave us the water. Maybe she thought it was funny. Maybe it meant something to her. Or maybe she just grabbed it from the fridge without thinking. Either way, it was there. 1 lonely bottle of water next to 2 $10 bills and 2 $5 bills, like we were part of some cruel survival game where the only prize was not starving. Nolan looked at me with his wide eyes. He was just a kid, but I could see him doing the same math I was doing. $30. 2 people. An entire summer. I tried to argue. I tried to explain that the rent was due in 10 days, that we barely had any food left in the fridge, that Nolan needed supplies for his summer activities. You can't leave 2 kids alone with grocery money and call it parenting. But Mom was already looking at her phone, already smiling at whatever message Boyd had just sent her. She said I was being dramatic. She told me to get a job if I needed money. She said this was her chance to be happy, and that I should support her instead of being selfish. Selfish. She actually called me selfish. Taxi honked outside. Mom grabbed her bags, kissed Nolan on the head without really looking at him, and told us she would call once she landed. Then she was gone. Just like that. The door closed, and the house went silent. Nolan didn't cry right away. He just stared at the $30 on the counter, like he was trying to make it multiply using pure willpower. I wished I had that power. I wished I had any power at all. That first night, after Nolan fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and counted the money again. $30. Our fridge had half a carton of eggs, some leftover pasta that didn't look safe anymore, a few condiments, and a lot of empty space. The rent, $850, was due on July 13th. The electricity bill sat unopened on the counter. I was too scared to look at it. I tried calling Mom around 9 that night. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking her to call me back, trying to keep my voice calm, trying not to sound as scared as I felt. She didn't call back that night, or the next morning, or the morning after that. By the third day, I understood she wasn't going to. Some people have savings for emergencies. Some people have family they can call. Some people have safety nets. We had $30, an empty bottle of water, and each other. I looked at my little brother was sleeping on the couch, still wearing the same clothes from the day before. I had been too tired to remind him to change. He trusted me. He believed I would figure everything out. He didn't know that I was only 18 years old and completely terrified. But this is the thing about fear. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it to push yourself forward. And I had an 11-year-old depending on me. So that night I made a decision. I was going to survive that summer. I was going to keep a roof over our heads and food in our stomachs. And when my mother finally came back from her romantic trip, she was going to see exactly what her children were capable of. She had no idea what that would really look like. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment, and your support truly means everything to me. Thank you so much. Now back to the story. Day 4 began with me staring into our pantry, hoping it might magically refill itself overnight. Spoiler alert, it didn't. We had peanut butter, half a loaf of bread that was starting to go stale, some cheap pasta, and exactly 1 can of tomato sauce. I did the math. If we ate very small portions, this might last 2 more days. Maybe. I made Nolan a peanut butter sandwich for breakfast and told him it was part of a special summer adventure. He didn't believe me. He was 11, not stupid, but he ate it without complaining. That hurt more than anything. He was already learning to expect less. By day 5, the $30 was gone. I spent the last of it on milk, bread, and a bag of rice. Rice, I told myself, could last forever. My grandmother used to say that rice was. My grandmother used to call rice the great equalizer. Rich or poor, everyone eats rice. She also used to say that hard work always pays off. Lately, I was starting to question that part. I began looking for work right away. You would think finding a job in July would be easy. Summer jobs everywhere, right? Well, every fast food place, every retail store, every business within walking distance had already hired their summer workers back in May. I was too late. When I asked at the grocery store, the manager actually laughed. Not in a cruel way, more like, "Where were you 2 months ago?" Still, it hurt. So I got creative. My first job was cleaning out Mrs. Delgado's garage, 3 houses down. She had been meaning to organize it for years. When I knocked on her door and offered to do it for $20, she looked at me like I had handed her a winning lottery ticket. 8 hours later, I had $20, a painful sunburn, and the knowledge that Mrs. Delgado had saved every newspaper since 1987. I didn't ask why. Some questions don't need answers. Day 7 brought a new problem. A bright orange notice was taped to our front door. Mr. Kowalski, our landlord, was not a patient man. He had a thick Polish accent and a mustache that seemed angry all by itself. The notice said we had 7 days to pay the rent or face eviction. 7 days. $850. I had $20 and a sunburn. I called my mother 12 times that week. Every call went straight to voicemail. By the 8th call, the mailbox was full. By the 10th call, I realized the truth. I had been blocked. My own mother had blocked my number while I was trying to tell her that her children might lose their home. I didn't let myself think about what that meant. I couldn't afford to. I had work to find. The car wash on Henderson Avenue was hiring that day. They needed laborers. No experience required. Cash paid at the end of each shift. I showed up at 6 in the morning and didn't leave until 7 at night. The pay was $65 for the week, and I earned every single cent. I learned things about the inside of strangers' cars that I never wanted to know. There was a French fry in one minivan that I swear was old enough to vote. Another car had so much dog hair that I sneezed for 3 hours straight. Still I kept coming back, kept scrubbing. I kept smiling at customers who barely noticed I was there. At the same time, Nolan was supposed to start summer camp that week. The deposit was $40. Money we clearly didn't have. He told me it was fine, that he didn't even want to go, but I heard him crying in his room that night. One of the neighborhood kids had made fun of him for wearing the same shorts 3 days in a row, called him poor, called him dirty. My little brother, who had done nothing wrong, was just trying to survive the same impossible situation I was. I wanted to find that kid and say a few things I won't repeat here. Instead, I went to my closet and took out my prom dress. It was pale blue, long, and the nicest thing I had ever owned. I had saved for 6 months to buy it, and when I wore it, I felt like a princess. The consignment shop gave me $35 for it. I told myself it was just a dress. I told myself it didn't matter. But walking out of that store, I felt like I had sold a piece of myself. The girl I was before this summer turned me into someone tougher. Day 9 brought another letter. A warning from the electric company. Payment overdue. Service would be cut off in 14 days. I added it to the growing pile of problems I couldn't afford to think about. By day 10, our refrigerator held nothing but condiments. Ketchup, mustard, a jar of pickles, and one container I was too scared to open. Nolan joked about having a condiment feast, and I laughed even though I felt like crying. That kid had more strength than anyone I knew. He definitely didn't get it from our mother. That night, I sat in the shower with the water running and cried until I had nothing left. I couldn't let Nolan see me fall apart. I was supposed to be the strong one. I was supposed to have answers. But I was 18 years old, tired, broke, and completely alone. Mr. Kowalski came by again, his mustache twitching with every word. 3 days left, he said. 3 days to pay, or we would need to start packing. He wasn't cruel about it. I could tell he felt bad. But business was business. He had his own bills to pay. Mrs. Pritchard from next door watched the whole conversation from her porch, not even pretending to mind her own business. That woman knew everyone's secrets and shared them freely. By the next morning, half the neighborhood would know the Harrison kids were about to be evicted. The thought made me feel sick. That night, I went for a walk to clear my head. I didn't have a destination. I was just wandering the streets. That's when I passed Martinelli's Italian restaurant, right as they were closing. A busboy was dragging trash bags toward the dumpster out back. Something made me stop and watch. Those bags weren't full of garbage. They were full of food. Bread, pasta, vegetables, containers of sauce. Perfectly good food. Being thrown away because the restaurant couldn't sell day-old items. I stood there as bag after bag was dumped. And something shifted inside me. Not hope. Not yet. But the beginning of an idea. An idea that was about to change everything. I approached. I walked up to the busboy before I could change my mind. He was young, maybe my age, with tired eyes and marinara stains on his apron. I asked him directly, "Was that food still good?" He shrugged. "Yeah, most of it was fine. They just can't serve it tomorrow. Health rules. Liability. Restaurant policy." Every night, he said, it was the same thing. Hundreds of dollars worth of perfectly good food thrown away. My stomach growled loud enough for both of us to hear. He looked at me for a moment, then glanced back toward the restaurant door. Without saying a word, he handed me 2 of the bags. I thanked him at least 15 times. He just nodded and went back inside. I almost ran all the way home. When I spread the food out on our kitchen table, Nolan's eyes went wide. Fresh bread only a day old. Pasta that just needed to be reheated. Vegetables with a few soft spots, but still perfectly fine. Containers of soup and sauce. It was more food than we had seen in days. Nolan ate until his stomach hurt. I had to tell him to slow down, worried he would make himself sick. That night, for the first time in over a week, we went to bed with full stomachs. But one meal doesn't fix everything. I knew those bags would only last a few days. Then we would be right back where we started. So my mind started working on something bigger. The next morning I walked to the public library. Our internet had been shut off 3 days earlier. Apparently, you have to pay bills for services to continue. A shocking concept. I spent hours researching food waste, food rescue groups, and something I had never heard of before. Food recovery programs. And that's when I learned. I walked up to the busboy before I could change my mind. He was young, maybe my age, with tired eyes and marinara stains on his apron. I asked him directly, "Was that food still good?" He shrugged. "Yeah, most of it was fine. They just can't serve it tomorrow. Health rules. Liability. Restaurant policy." Every night, he said, it was the same thing. Hundreds of dollars worth of perfectly good food thrown away. My stomach growled loud enough for both of us to hear. He looked at me for a moment, then glanced back toward the restaurant door. Without saying a word, he handed me 2 of the bags. I thanked him at least 15 times. He just nodded and went back inside. I almost ran all the way home. When I spread the food out on our kitchen table, Nolan's eyes went wide. Fresh bread only a day old. Pasta that just needed to be reheated. Vegetables with a few soft spots, but still perfectly fine. Containers of soup and sauce. It was more food than we had seen in days. Nolan ate until his stomach hurt. I had to tell him to slow down, worried he would make himself sick. That night, for the first time in over a week, we went to bed with full stomachs. But one meal doesn't fix everything. I knew those bags would only last a few days. Then we would be right back where we started. So my mind started working on something bigger. The next morning I walked to the public library. Our internet had been shut off 3 days earlier. Apparently, you have to pay bills for services to continue. A shocking concept. I spent hours researching food waste, food rescue groups, and something I had never heard of before. Food recovery programs. And that's when I learned. Restaurants throw away millions of pounds of perfectly good food every year. Not because it's spoiled, but because of rules, liability fears, and the simple fact that they make too much. I learned that there were organizations all across the country that collected this food and gave it to people who needed it. Real organizations. Legal ones. All it took were proper agreements and liability waivers. I spent so much time on Google that week that the algorithm probably thought I was opening a restaurant or going to culinary school. It kept suggesting chef hats and cooking classes. If only it knew I was just trying to figure out how not to starve. I printed everything I could find. Sample liability waivers. Food safety rules. Information about similar programs in other cities. My stack of papers was thick, messy, and unorganized, but it felt like hope. The problem was obvious. I was 18 years old and nobody important. Why would any restaurant listen to me? That's when I found Mr. Okonkwo. Leonard Okonkwo ran the community center on Maple Street. He was a retired high school teacher, 72 years old, with a voice as warm as coffee and a handshake strong enough to crush walnuts. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him. More importantly, everyone trusted him. On day 12, I walked into the community center with my pile of papers and a speech I had practiced 17 times in the mirror. I told him everything. About my mother leaving. About the $30. About the food being thrown away. About my idea to collect it and give it to people who needed it. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me for what felt like forever. Then he smiled. He told me I had a good heart, but a messy plan. He said success was like his mother's stew. You need patience, the right ingredients, and you have to keep stirring or everything burns at the bottom. But he also said he had seen worse ideas succeed because someone believed in them strongly enough. The key, he explained, was structure. People trusted structure. If I wanted restaurants to give me their extra food, I had to look legitimate. I needed proper paperwork, a system, a plan for distributing the food. I couldn't just show up with a shopping bag and good intentions. So we worked together. He helped me fix my liability waiver. The one I found online was okay, but Mr. Okonkwo knew how to make it sound official. He taught me how to approach business owners and present myself as professional and capable, even though I still felt like a kid playing dress-up. He let me use the community center as my base. Any food I collected could be distributed there to people who needed it. By day 13, I had a real plan. I also had 3 days until eviction and exactly $43 in my pocket. I went back to Martinelli's, but this time I didn't go to the back door. I walked in through the front during a quiet afternoon and asked to speak with the owner. Mrs. Martinelli was in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen everything and were impressed by nothing. She had owned the restaurant for 31 years. Her husband had started it before her. She had survived recessions, health inspections, and 3 different construction projects that blocked her front entrance. She was not easily convinced. I handed her my proposal, handwritten on notebook paper. I couldn't afford to print anything else, so it was all handwritten. I explained my idea. I showed her the liability waiver. I told her about the community center, about Mr. Okonkwo, and about the families in our neighborhood who could use the food her restaurant threw away every night. She studied my proposal for a long time. Then she looked at me. "How old are you?" she asked. 18, I said. "Where are your parents?" I hesitated, then told the truth. My mother had left me with $30 2 weeks ago and hadn't come back. I was trying to keep myself and my little brother alive. Something changed in Mrs. Martinelli's face. Not pity, she didn't seem like the pitying type. It was more like recognition, like she remembered being young, desperate, and doing whatever it took. She agreed. 1-week trial. If it went well, we could continue. If there was a single complaint, a single problem, it was over. I thanked her so many times she actually told me to stop before I thanked the words right out of myself. I practically floated out of that restaurant. That same afternoon, Mr. Kowalski came by. I was expecting our eviction notice. Instead, he stood on our porch, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. He had heard about what I was doing. Mrs. Pritchard's gossip machine had actually been useful for once. He had heard I was trying to help people. His mustache did that twitching thing it always did. Then he said he would give us 30 more days. Not out of charity. He was quick to explain that, but because he respected hard work. His parents had come to this country with nothing and built a life through hard work. He recognized that same spirit in me. 30 more days. It wasn't a solution. But it was time. And time was everything. That night, Nolan asked me if things were going to be okay. I looked at my little brother, so brave through everything, never blaming me, never complaining even when things were at their worst. Told him yes. And for the first time since Mom had left, I actually believed it. What I didn't know was that our story was just beginning. The hardest parts were still ahead, but so were some of the most incredible moments I could have imagined, including the day my mother finally showed up on our doorstep and found something she never expected waiting for her. The first official night of what I was now calling my food rescue operation was day 14. I arrived at Martinelli's back door at exactly 10 o'clock with borrowed coolers from Mr. Okonkwo and a nervous energy that made my hands shake. The same busboy from before. Thomas, I had learned, had everything ready. 3 bags of bread, 2 containers of pasta, vegetables sorted and clean, and a tray of lasagna that hadn't sold that evening. I loaded everything into the coolers like I was handling treasure because to me it was. The next morning I set up at the community center at 7. Mr. Okonkwo had spread the word through his network. Retired teachers, church friends, neighbors he'd known for decades. By 8 o'clock there was a line of people waiting. Elderly folks on fixed incomes. Single mothers with kids clinging to their arms. A veteran in a wheelchair who hadn't had a hot meal in 3 days. I handed out food until there was nothing left. And something happened that I hadn't expected. People thanked me. Not just polite thank yous but real gratitude. One woman, Mrs. Patterson, grabbed my hands and told me I was an angel. I wasn't an angel. I was just a desperate teenager who had stumbled onto something bigger than myself had started. By the end of that first week, word had spread beyond Mr. Okonkwo's network. People were showing up that I'd never seen before. The demand was growing, but my supply was still just one restaurant. So I expanded. Golden Dragon Buffet became my second partner. The owner was skeptical at first. His English wasn't perfect, and I think he was worried about liability. But when I showed him the waiver, now properly typed and printed thanks to the library's free computers, he nodded slowly. Buffets have even more waste than regular restaurants, he explained. Food can't sit out for too long. Health rules. Every night, I throw away enough to feed 30 people. Not anymore. Next came Sunrise Bakery. The owner, a cheerful woman named Patricia Holloway, actually cried when I explained what I was doing. Her grandmother had grown up during the Depression, she said. The idea of throwing away good bread while people went hungry had always bothered her. She'd just never known there was another option. Nolan became my right-hand man, my CFO. He called himself Chief Food Organizer. He took the job seriously. He even made himself a little name tag out of cardboard and marker. Every afternoon, he helped me sort donations, organize the distribution schedule, and keep track of what we had. The kid was 11 years old, and running logistics better than most adults I knew. By day 25, I had 6 restaurant partners and was feeding over 40 families each week. The community center had become a hub of activity. Volunteers started showing up, people who wanted to help, and people who had been helped and wanted to give back. Mr. Okonkwo coordinated everything with the calm efficiency of a man who had spent 30. Mr. Okonkwo ran everything with the calm efficiency of a man who had spent 30 years managing teenagers. Even Mrs. Pritchard stopped gossiping and started volunteering. I didn't fully trust her yet. Old habits die hard, but she showed up every morning to help sort bread. And she hadn't spread a single rumor in days. People can surprise you sometimes. Then came day 30. I was in the middle of organizing a delivery when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Except it wasn't unknown. It was my mother's new Canadian phone. The message was short and brutal. Having an amazing time. Boyd proposed. Wedding in September. Don't bother me with drama. That was it. No questions about how we were doing. No apology for disappearing. No acknowledgement that she had left her children with $30 and a bottle of water a month ago. Just an announcement about her engagement and an instruction not to bother her. Nolan saw my face and asked what was wrong. I showed him the text. He read it twice, then handed my phone back without saying a word. But I saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Not sadness, but something harder. Like the last little piece of him that still hoped Mom would come back and make everything okay had finally crumbled away. We didn't talk about it. There was work to do. Day 33 brought a new challenge. I was at the community center when a woman in a blazer walked in, carrying a clipboard and wearing an expression that meant business. She was from the county health department and she had questions. Someone filed a complaint, she said. Anonymous. But someone reported that you are distributing food without permits, without health inspections, without any of the official approvals legitimate food operations require. My heart sank. I thought about everything I'd built over the past 3 weeks of work. The partnerships. The families counting on us. The volunteers showing up every day. All of it could disappear because of one complaint. The health inspector, Dorothy Reeves, wasn't unkind. She could see that what we were doing was good. But rules were rules. If I wanted to continue, I needed proper permits, a certified kitchen space, and official non-profit status. The cost. About $500 in fees. Plus, finding a commercial kitchen to operate from. She gave me 2 weeks. 2 weeks to find $500 when I could barely keep the lights on at home. 2 weeks to find a commercial kitchen when I didn't even have a working stove in our apartment. 2 weeks to make everything official when I was still technically just a kid trying not to drown. I thanked Dorothy Reeves for the information and somehow stayed composed until she left. Then I sat on the community center steps and tried very hard not to panic. Mr. Okonkwo found me there 20 minutes later. He sat down beside me, his old knees creaking, and asked what was wrong. I told him everything. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I will never forget. Obstacles are just opportunities wearing ugly masks, he said. Every successful person I've ever known faced moments like this. Moments where giving up seemed like the only choice. The ones who succeed are the ones who find another way. I didn't have $500, but I had something else. I had a story. The next day I called the local newspaper. Jasmine Torres was a young reporter at the Riverside Gazette, hungry for stories that mattered. When I told her about what we were doing, about the abandoned teenager who had turned, when I told her about turning food waste into community meals, she practically ran to the community center to interview me. The article ran the next week with a headline, "Teen turns tragedy into triumph. Local food rescue feeds dozens." The response was immediate. Donations started coming in. $5 here, $20 there, $100 from someone who wanted to stay anonymous. Within a week, we had over $2,000. Enough for permits, fees, and everything else we needed. But more than money, we gained attention. People shared the article on social media. Local businesses reached out to partner with us. The mayor's office even called to show support. Someone at the community center suggested we needed an official name. After much debate, Nolan wanted to call it Food Avengers, which I had to veto for legal reasons. We finally settled on Second Chance Kitchen because that's what we were giving people. And it's what life had given me. What I didn't know was that the article had reached further than our small town. It had gone all the way to Canada, and it had set something in motion that would bring everything to a head in ways I could never have predicted. The television interview happened on day 44. Channel 7 News had picked up the story from the newspaper. Suddenly, I was sitting in a real studio with real cameras, and a real news anchor asking me questions about my life. I had never been so nervous. The makeup lady tried to cover the bags under my eyes. She needed a lot of concealer. I told her I hadn't slept properly in 44 days. She quietly added more powder and wished me luck. If you're still with me at this point in the story, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you're enjoying this, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Truly, it means everything to me and helps more than you know. Now let me tell you what happened next, because this is where everything changed. The interview aired that evening. The anchor, a polished woman named Rebecca Stanton, had done her homework. She didn't just ask about Second Chance Kitchen. She asked how it all started, about my mother leaving, the $30, everything. I hadn't planned to tell the whole truth. I had prepared vague answers about family challenges and hard times. But sitting there under those bright lights, something changed. I thought about Nolan at home watching. I thought about all the people we had helped, who had their own struggles. I thought about how silence protects the people who hurt us. So I told the truth. All of it. I said my mother had left for Canada with her boyfriend on July 3rd. I said she had given us $30 and a bottle of water for the whole summer. I said she had blocked my calls and sent only one text in 6 weeks, not to check on us but to announce her engagement. I said everything I had built had come from desperation, not inspiration. The anchor's face changed as I spoke. I could see the crew behind the cameras exchanging looks. This wasn't the feel-good story they had expected. This was raw. The segment aired that night with a new headline: "Abandoned Teen Creates Food Empire While Mother Vacations in Canada." By morning, the story had gone viral, not just locally but nationally. News outlets picked it up, shared it, and commented on it. My phone exploded with notifications, interview requests, and messages of support from strangers across the country. Second Chance Kitchen received more donations in 24 hours than we had received in the entire. We received more donations in one day than we had in the previous month. A local business owner, Mr. Fitzgerald, who ran a catering company, offered us the use of his commercial kitchen for free. Our permit applications were fast-tracked by the county. We officially became a registered non-profit with tax-exempt status. 12 restaurants were now partnering with us. We were feeding over 80 families every week. Volunteers were signing up faster than we could train them. But the story had also reached Canada. My mother called on day 46. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She was furious. Not apologetic, not concerned, furious. Her voice shook with rage as she demanded to know how I could embarrass her like this. Boyd's family had seen the news story. His business partners had seen it. Everyone was asking questions about what kind of woman abandons her children. I listened to her rant for almost 5 minutes without saying a word. When she finally paused for breath, I said one thing. "You left us with $30 for nearly 2 months. She sputtered something about me being dramatic, exaggerating, and not understanding adult relationships. Then she announced she was coming home immediately to fix this mess and set the record straight. She hung up before I could respond. I should have felt scared. Instead, I felt something closer to peace. Let her come. Let her see what we had built. Let her face the truth she had been running from. What I didn't know, and couldn't have known, was that the news story had caught the attention of more than just my mother. Mrs. Pritchard, my gossipy neighbor who had become an unlikely volunteer, had been carrying a secret for weeks. Back when she was still just the neighborhood busybody, she had been the one who filed. She had been the one who filed the anonymous complaint with the health department. At first, Mrs. Pritchard had been skeptical of what I was doing, worried about health risks, maybe a little jealous of the attention I was getting. But as she watched me work, struggle, and give everything to help people, something changed in her. Guilt, maybe, or genuine admiration. Whatever it was, it pushed her to do something else. 3 weeks before the news story aired, Mrs. Pritchard had called Child Protective Services. Not to hurt me, but to help. She reported that an 11-year-old child had been left without a proper guardian for over a month. She gave dates, details, everything she had observed. CPS opened an investigation. They couldn't do much while my mother was in Canada, out of their jurisdiction, but they were watching, waiting, and building a case. When the news story confirmed everything, including my mother's location and her plans to return, they coordinated with local police. Day 47. The day my mother's plane landed. I was at home with Nolan when we heard cars pull up. Multiple cars. I looked out the window and saw 2 police cruisers and an unmarked sedan parked in front of our house. My first thought was that something had gone wrong with Second Chance Kitchen. A permit issue, a complaint, something I'd overlooked. I told Nolan to stay inside and walked out to meet them. The officer in charge, a tall man with kind eyes named Sergeant Morrison, asked if I was Kristen Harrison. Said yes. He asked if my mother was expected home today. I said yes, she should be arriving any minute. Then he explained why they were there. Child abandonment. Neglect of a minor. Failure to provide adequate care for a dependent. These were serious charges, he said, and they needed to speak with my mother as soon as she arrived. I stood on the front porch and tried to process it. My mother was about to be questioned by police for what she had done to us. Not because I reported her, I hadn't, but because someone else had seen the truth and refused to stay silent. 20 minutes later, a taxi pulled up to the curb. My mother stepped out, looking like she had just left a resort. Tanned, relaxed, designer sunglasses on her head. She had 2 new, expensive suitcases, probably gifts from Boyd. She was already shaping her face into an expression of righteous anger, ready to storm in and take control. Then she saw the police cars. Her steps slowed. Her expression changed from anger to confusion, then to something close to fear. She looked at the officers, then at me, then back at the officers. Sergeant Morrison approached her calmly and explained who he was and why he was there. I watched my mother's face go through a dozen emotions. Shock, denial, outrage, panic. She tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to spin her vacation as reasonable. But then she made the mistake of looking past the officers, past me, toward the community center 2 blocks away. There was a banner hanging above the entrance. Second Chance Kitchen, serving our community. Beneath it was a photo of me and Nolan, smiling. She stared at that banner for a long, silent moment. Then she looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. I wasn't the scared 18-year-old she had left behind. I was standing tall, healthy, confident. Nolan appeared beside me. Not hiding, not crying, but standing with his shoulders back like someone who had learned his own worth. We weren't broken. We weren't desperate. We weren't the mess she had left behind. We were survivors. We were thriving. And she had missed all of it. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Her designer luggage sat forgotten in the street. Her fairy tale summer had ended, and real life was waiting. The officers asked her to come with them to answer some questions. She went. What choice did she have? I watched the police car drive away with my mother in the back seat and felt something unexpected. Not triumph, not satisfaction, but a quiet, deep sense of peace. Whatever happened next, we had already won. The investigation took 3 weeks. Child Protective Services interviewed me, Nolan, neighbors, Mr. Okonkwo, and half the community. They documented everything. The $30, the blocked phone calls, the single text about the engagement, the 47 days of absence. My mother hired a lawyer. Of course, Boyd had given her money before disappearing from her life. Yes, Boyd. Apparently, his wealthy family wanted nothing to do with that kind of publicity. The engagement was called off about 6 hours after the news story aired. Funny how fast fairy tales crumble when reality shows up uninvited. In the end, my mother wasn't arrested. The charges were serious, but she had no prior record. The court also took into account that Nolan hadn't been physically harmed. She received 3 years of probation, mandatory parenting classes, and 200 hours of community service. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. When the judge asked where she would complete her community service, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I offered to let her work at Second Chance Kitchen. People thought I was crazy. Mr. Okonkwo asked if I was sure, his eyes full of concern. Even Nolan looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Why would I want my mother anywhere near what I had built? But here's what I understood that others didn't. Punishment wasn't going to change her. Jail time wasn't going to make her a better person. The only way she would ever understand what she had done was if she saw it, if she lived it, if she spent 200 hours surrounded by the community that had supported her children when she wouldn't. The judge approved the arrangement. My mother's first day of community service was awkward beyond words. She showed up in clothes that were too nice for sorting vegetables. Her hair was perfectly styled. Her expression was a mix of humiliation and resentment. The volunteers who knew our story gave her looks that could freeze water. She didn't say a word to anyone, but community service has a way of wearing down walls. Week after week she showed up. She sorted bread alongside Mrs. Pritchard, who I had learned was the one who had called CPS in the first place. She packaged meals next to Mr. Okonkwo, who treated her with firm but fair expectations. She served food to families who thanked her without knowing who she was. And slowly, something began to change. I noticed it first in small ways. She stopped styling her hair for service days. She started asking questions about how things worked. She learned the names of the regular volunteers. She began arriving early instead of exactly on time. By week 6, she broke down crying during a shift. We were in the back room, just the two of us, boxing up meals for delivery. Out of nowhere she started sobbing. Ugly, messy sobs that she tried to hide behind her hands. When she finally caught her breath, she looked at me with red eyes and said something I had waited my whole life to hear. "I'm sorry." Not "I'm sorry," but not, "I'm sorry you felt that way." Just those 2 words, raw and undefended. She said she had spent her whole life looking for someone to take care of her. After my father left, she had been so desperate to find that security again that she forgot she was supposed to be the one providing it. She said she had convinced herself we were fine, that I was mature enough to handle things, and that her happiness mattered too. She admitted she had been selfish and wrong, and she didn't expect me to forgive her. I didn't forgive her, not that day. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a door you open slowly, checking for traps along the way. But I told her the door wasn't locked. That was 6 months ago. Today, Second Chance Kitchen operates out of a real commercial kitchen donated by Mr. Fitzgerald, whose catering business became our biggest supporter. We partner with 23 restaurants across the city. We serve over 200 families every week. We have 4 paid staff members and over 40 regular volunteers. I received a full scholarship to State University for social entrepreneurship. Classes start next fall. Nolan is thriving in school. He wrote an essay about our summer that won a county-wide writing competition. The kid has a future in storytelling, which makes sense. He lived a pretty incredible one. As for my mother, she completed her community service months ago. She still volunteers twice a week. She's not perfect. We're not the kind of family you see in commercials, laughing over breakfast and hugging at every chance. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. But she's trying, really trying. She started therapy. She got a steady job. She stopped looking for a man to rescue her and started figuring out how to rescue herself. Last week, she asked if she could take Nolan to a movie. Just the two of them. He said yes. Progress comes in small steps. I still have that empty water bottle, by the way. The one she left us with on July 3rd. I keep it on my desk where I can see it every day. Not out of bitterness. I'm past that now. Keep it as a reminder. A reminder that sometimes the people who should lift you up are the ones who let you down. A reminder that rock bottom isn't the end of the story. It's just the foundation you build on. A reminder that $30 and a bottle of water can become something extraordinary if you refuse to give up. My mother saw police cars, news cameras, and a daughter she didn't recognize. But what made her gasp wasn't the trouble she was in. It was realizing that we didn't need her anymore. That we had built something beautiful out of the nothing she had left behind. That her absence had given us the one thing she never could. The chance to discover who we really were. Some lessons cost more than others, but some lessons are worth every penny. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next story.